Hi everybody, this is Tom with another LEC preview of already the final week of the Summer Split 2022. It is the moment. There are still 9 teams in the running, in theory, for a top spot in the LEC playoffs. Mad Lions is already locked, but for them, the seeding is obviously going to be very important. So it's going to be an incredibly tense weekend. As you see, I have a bit of a different setup. So if anything goes wrong or a bit different this week, it's because I'm on the couch. I had surgery to my knee. It's all fine. It's all good. No need to worry about that. But obviously need some rest for that joint while it heals. And that's why I have this different setup now. But should all still be good. Without further ado, let's look at the top 10 first of my LEC Super Fantasy lobby. I am now in 29th, I believe. It's going to be difficult for me to get in the top 10, but never give up hope. Always keep fighting, especially in the final weeks. There's a lot of points to be made if you bet on the right team to win the best of 5. This is the top 10 as you see it now. Looking very good, looking very close, and Smurfette is kind of running away slowly with the points, but there's a bunch of people who can still catch up with that. Now, some thoughts on the teams before we get into the preview as usual. I probably will keep it a bit shorter because there are many teams about whom I have very little to say because the league has been so chaotic. But let's start just with BDS, who obviously last weekend won their game against XL. Picked up a second win, doubled their wins, woohoo! And heading into this weekend, obviously, they don't have anything to play for, but they play against Misfits, Rogue, and Mad Lions. And what I think BDS can do in this week is be spoiler, because they have nothing to lose. They can play freely, they can go for wacky comps, they can try to disrupt any other team's run for the playoff spot. And I think that is pretty dangerous, because if you play against a team that has nothing to lose while you have every moment that counts for you and everything is so tense, you must perform. Even if you just need one win, like against a team like BDS, maybe it gets in your head of, okay, I definitely cannot lose this one. We have to win this one. Maybe, that's something that I can definitely see happen to Excel last week, where it's like, okay, it's BDS. Then they lost. And, it wasn't a very clean win from BDS. It took them a long enough time to finish the game. But after all, something like that can be a hard blow to a team to suffer. So, I still don't think BDS is going to amount to much, because I think the teams that they play against are just on the basis they are better than BDS. And heading into this week, they obviously have done a lot of prep as well. So I think the thing to look out to with BDS is just, are they going to be able to upset any run? And if so, how are they going to do it? Because it's wide open. Nobody expected them to win against XL, right? So we'll see. SK Gaming, they are still in the run for the playoffs. Let me just pull up the odds here. They have a 9.8% chance of making it to the playoffs, and obviously that's not very high. I think even if they win all the 3 games, they're very dependent on other teams' results of making it in. So I don't think they'll make it in, but they have a chance. I think for them the most important part is unlocking Certes, who has been performing very well in the mid lane. Gilius probably needs a Poppy to perform well. Genox in the top lane has been pretty solid, actually. Put out a tweet yesterday, I believe, where I said, hey, I think people should talk a bit more about this guy, because his laning sets are actually very good. So I hope that he will get a chance to shine, at least in the final week, even if SK doesn't make it to the playoffs, which I don't think they will. So I don't know what else to say about them. They also might be a spoiler, right? But on the same hand, I think they're a bit of a hybrid between teams that seriously can go for playoffs and BDS, where SK must pull out some weird tricks to get a shot at making the playoffs. Maybe they'll do it. Could be exciting. Then we go to Fnatic. As you see, currently in 8th place in terms of playoffs odds. They are in a shared 6th place in the standings with a 7-8 score. They're on the edge of making playoffs and not making playoffs. Nobody expected Fnatic to be in this position. If you saw the interview we did with Wunder, which I published yesterday, he said that this team has a very tough time recovering from their downs. So when they lose, it drags on too long. They ended on a loss against G2. And it's going to be very difficult for me to see them still making playoffs. Obviously, Fnatic has plot armor. So historically, this would be the first time in the org's history that they would not make playoffs in the EULCS or LEC. And given the talent that's on the lineup, obviously you would expect this team to at least, and that's the bare minimum, make it to the playoffs. I'm a bit skeptical because, as I said, this team doesn't recover well from their downs. They're also just completely lack synergy, and I have a hard time seeing that coming together unless they pull out some insane draft advantage, which is apparently a much more determining factor this split than it has been in other splits or even years. The players have repeatedly said this. Games are often decided in draft, and I don't think that's a strength of Fnatic either. I think they play very safely, very much to comfort, and just sprinkle a bit of meta in here every now and then. So I am skeptical. I don't think Fnatic is going to make playoffs, but it would be a good recovery for them, obviously, if they go 3-0. And in worst case scenario, I think even if they go 3-0, in worst case, they'd have tiebreakers, but that would be if there's like 5 teams equal at 10 and 8, if I'm not mistaken. XL, obviously, in a very difficult position. They have a loss streak right now. I think for them, the most important part is just shaking off what happened in the last 2 weeks and going back to the basics. We saw XL have a fantastic early game at the start of the split, and it seems that other teams have either caught up with their meta read and how they play the game, or even surpassed it in quite a few cases, actually. This roster has a bunch of very good players together. With Mickey X and Patrick, I think you have the formula for one of the best bot lanes in the league. I think Marcoon played well at the start of the split. Nukedog is just a solid mid laner, very versatile in supporting his team. And in the top lane, you have Finn, who has actually, in the start of the split, been performing very fine, but hasn't kept up that momentum either. So, for XL, they are in a very difficult position heading into this weekend. As you can see, the odds are against them, and the momentum is against them. But I would follow the odds actually in saying that they have a higher chance than Fnatic of making it. I probably would say that if I look at the teams overall, they would probably, in my book, be the favorite to make the top 6 over Astralis and Fnatic. Obviously, I made the bet on Best in the West with Fnatic. Not really a bet, but just I gave the prediction that Astralis is gonna make playoffs, and I will be with them in the second. But if I am completely reasonable, I would say it's XL who is favored to make the playoffs out of these 3. Then Astralis, as I said, I predicted them to make the playoffs. It's kind of a bit of a YOLO because the LEC is so unpredictable at the moment, but at the same time, there's some logic behind it. Because on the first day, as we'll get to in a bit, Astralis is going to play Fnatic. They're direct competitors. And I think it's safe to say that the winner of that one will push the other one out of the playoffs run. I think for Astralis, this is also a team that plays freely, plays loosely. They have Xerxes, who is one of the best junglers in the LEC at this point. I'm not sure if that's something people talk about enough, but he's performing very solidly. I think Dejor has his moment. Jonghoon, if he's on a playmaking champion, can pop off. Physic Chachi runs it down in lane, completely ins, but apparently he's a big shot caller for the team. And Kobe is a bit on and off for me this split. Not a top tier bot laner by any means, but he has his moments. But as I said, I think 2 weeks ago in another preview video, this team has the spice to pop off randomly. Like they have comeback skills. That we've seen that actually a few times where Mad Lions gave them a way in, and Mad Lions obviously closed out the game, but Astralis pulled it back pretty impressively. And individuals have pop-off performances in different games, which I think, combined with the good mood that they have, which is incredibly important. Just look at Fnatic, who don't have a good mood, and see how their performance is going. I think it gives Astralis a bit of an edge. So obviously, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek to say they're going to make it over XL and Fnatic, but I like that. I live for the chaos, so I hope in that regard, my prediction is right. It would just be so fun to see Astralis make it over Exile and Fnatic after the investments by those two, just to throw a wrench in the works. Then we have Misfits. Pretty solid position to make playoffs. I don't think anybody expected that at the start of the split when they went 1-4, I think, in the first 2 weeks. Obviously, very terrible start, but they've recovered very well. They have a clear identity. They play for scaling in the late game, where Neon and Veteo can pop off. I think Zanzara hasn't added much in terms of jungling skill, but apparently emotionally he is very beneficial for the team, which is fine. Mersa is just not dying as much as he used to, or plays it a bit safer. It's fine. Help Neon play a bit protectively. And in the top lane, I think Irrelevant is actually a bit underestimated by many people. He's a solid tank player, which is what Misfits requires him to do. I think Misfits in a pretty solid position to go into the playoffs. Now, in the playoffs, because the system is a bit weird, they will have seeding, and I think they have 30 points from the spring split, because they ended in 4th, and they will be added to the points they ended based on the regular standings at the end of this week. So they might actually have a top 4 seeding, which would be a very good position for them to go from, obviously, because if you're top 4, you just need to win one best of 5 in order to make it to Worlds already. So that's good for them. That said, I doubt that they will do much in best of 5s, but we'll see in what shape they end the regular split, because in best of 5s, you require a lot of diversity, a lot more. You require stamina. I don't think Misfits has that, but for now, they're doing very well in the season, very pleasantly surprised. Neon is definitely a top tier ADC in the region at the moment, probably second best by my book. Rogue, difficult. They have a lot of points from the spring split still. If they are close enough to G2, they will probably be the first seed heading into the playoffs, which means they automatically qualify for Worlds. I'm not sure about Rogue. Malrang has not been playing well. The laners are fine, but as a team, they're not sticking together anymore as well as they used to. So if they make Worlds, which I assume they do, I hope that in that break they can maybe adapt to a new meta, because Worlds is going to be played on a new meta, obviously, a new patch. And for them, I think the core component is, okay, how do you want to play the game? Because at this point, we see them failing turret dives 4v2, which they normally would easily execute, right? They've lost their playbook. Rogue used to be a boring team, which would just play it out as you're supposed to, not go for any crazy snowball attempts or catch-up mechanics. They've just played by the book, and they're not doing that well enough anymore. So Rogue is not performing well, but they'll probably still make Worlds. They probably need one win if I look at these odds in order to secure it fully, which I expect them to do pretty easily. Vitality, I think after week 6, people said, okay, this is the Vitality super team. Then they played BDS and Astralis and said, oh, we shouldn't underestimate them. Lost to Astralis. They're probably just joking around a bit too much. I do expect them to be fully focused for this final week. Also do expect Vitality to go to Worlds at this point. They also need one win in order to lock playoffs, I think. But they have lived up. They've stepped up their game pretty impressively. And yeah, I don't think there's too much to say that differs from what I said in week 7, actually, that Haru is stepping up much more proactive. Perks is one of the best mid laners in the LEC again. Alfari is performing super well. Karzi and Labrov seem to have found each other, and also seem to be a bit more proactive in calling for help from other teammates. So it's working. It's fine. Vitality is finally, I think, where people would have wanted them to be a bit earlier, probably somewhere in the spring split, but they're here now. And given that the LEC is such a heap of shite in terms of how teams are performing, they probably will make it. So good for them. G2 still struggle a lot with the early game. Obviously, they stomped Fnatic. They did very well there. Very proactive. Dylan Falco said in the PGL that Caps is ramping up his performance. I think he's actually been performing pretty decently already. And I think for G2, the most important part is finding the core synergy between Caps and Youngles again, because that's what got them so far in spring. And from there on the other players bounced off, if Caps and Youngos were stepping up. Broken Blade was stepping up well. Targamas felt more comfortable going for roams, going for engages. Flacket's always been, well, at least now, he and mostly in the past as well, he's been okay, play your lane safe, you be helpful in team fights. He's doing, if he can do that well, I thought G2 should be performing fine. Obviously, they are 9-6 at this moment, so in a good position to make playoffs. Still scraped together a bunch of wins, even though their early game was so whack, so shaky. But I think that we should expect G2 to be a top seed for playoffs because they have a bunch of points from the spring split. And then we have Mad Lions, the team that I think after week 6, people said clearly the best team, has dropped off a bit, going 0-2. I think for them, the most important part is just not stressing too much. This is a team that's clearly emotionally very happy when they win. And if they struggle, I don't think that's going to impact them too much. But if it does, that would be a bit of a worry. I doubt it, though. This coaching staff is very positive, very good at working with the players as people. They've shown that in the past, right? So I think for them, for Mad Lions, focus on your Niski Elyoya synergy again. Try to enable Unforgiven a bit more because I think he has been probably the best bot laner in the LEC this split. But it doesn't seem like they always know how to use him very well. It seems like they're very focused on Elyoya and Niski and then enabling things. Maybe now that you've looked playoffs already and probably are going for a good seed, start experimenting a bit with playing towards your bot side a bit more. I think that's possible. Armut, I think people underestimate him a bit when he's on Gwen, but Gwen is OP and he's doing decent, he's doing fine on it. So overall, I think Mad Lions is in a very good position. But I think that I don't really know what went wrong with them in the O2 week, but it's not something to worry about too much, I think. So those are my thoughts on the teams. Now let's go to the days. Again, sorry for the shaking a bit because I am on a couch with my knee in bandages. It's a bit wobbly, but we'll go to day 1 of 3 days because it's a super week. BDS versus Misfits to start us off. I expect Misfits to win this. I don't think BDS is going to be able to pull off something against Misfits, who have a very clear way of how to play the game. BDS has had a few games where their early game was fine, which is Misfits' weak side of the timeline, basically. I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome Misfits, though, because Neon is extremely good, much better than Xmany. I think Viteo is better than Nuclear, and Syncroft is probably a bit better than Zanzara if he has his moments. But yeah, I think all across the board, Misfits is just a better team, has a better plan, should win this game relatively easily. SK versus Vitality. If Vitality is feeling cocky, they're gonna lose this game because SK is a team that plays very well on mistakes that teams make. I highly doubt, though, that Vitality is gonna be cocky in this game. After losing against Astralis, I think, especially a player like Perk says, guys, what the hell happened? How can we underestimate these guys? How can we lose this? It's illegal, as Kadro would say. So I expect them to be full focus and play very well against SK. So I predict Vitality to win that one. Then we have Rogue versus Excel. Key matchup for me here is going to be in the jungle because Marcoon is a better jungler than Malrang. This split, even though Rogue is higher in the standings, I implore you to look at how the jungles go. Malrang gets out-jungled in most of his games this split, and Marcoon has the past weeks had rough weeks, but at the start of the split he was very good. So if Marcoon is able to go back to those performances at the start of the split, and from there on transition that advantage he gets into his laners, I think Excel can win this game. Overall, though, I think Rogue just has the better laners, and I think Rogue should win this game. I think this is not going to be a very pretty game, to be honest, even though it should be between those two teams, who a few weeks ago people were saying, oh, those two teams are probably the best teams we have in the league. I highly doubt that this will be a very pretty game, because of these teams' struggles in recent weeks and the weaknesses that they have shown to the world that they have. So Rogue win, but XL has a chance, definitely. Maybe in the bot lane they can do something well if Mickey doesn't have a game where he goes 0-10 again. So we'll see about that. Astralis versus Fnatic. Ooh, this is the important game, right? And if you're watching this video now, I'll probably be live viewing this on Veterans Twitch stream with him, because this is the matchup that's going to probably determine which one of us has the better bet on who is making playoffs. I think Astralis, he thinks Fnatic. So obviously, I will have to predict Astralis as a winner here as well, because I think Astralis has the positive vibes going for them. I think Fnatic is going to enter the stage super stressed. I think Astralis is going to be in a very good mood. I think Humanoid in the mid lane is not going to get the big enough advantage over Dajor. I think Xerxes is going to out-jungle Resorg, and especially in synergy with his laners. Wunder could be a way for Fnatic to win this, because if he gets put on a carry champ and just gets such a big lead that he can completely stomp Physic Chachi, maybe that is something Fnatic can do something with. But in the bot lane, I also don't think Upset and Hylissang are performing significantly better than Kobe and Jungle in this split, which is crazy to say, because this should be the best bot lane, Upset and Hylissang, in the LEC, but they aren't. They're not making nothing happen. They're not making anything happen. So I genuinely think Astralis is gonna win that game, because Astralis can have that team synergy at moments, much more often, I would say, than Fnatic, whereas Fnatic relies on individual outplays, and I just don't see it happen. Obviously, there is a chance that Fnatic does, but I genuinely think Fnatic's gonna be in a terrible mood heading into this week and suffer the consequences of it. Now, I hope I'm wrong, because this is a big project and there's a lot of money invested, so it would be very bad for the LEC overall if such a project fails. But I have my thoughts, so we'll see how they play out. G2 versus Mad Lions as the final match of the first day. Very exciting matchup. These are two rival teams. They're very close to each other in the standings. I think in 2020... Yeah, it was 2020, obviously, when Mad Lions was the first team to beat G2 in a best of 3 or in a best of 5 in however long, in a very long time. So I think that's a rivalry that's still lingering. I expect this to be a very fun matchup with a lot of aggressive play. I do expect Mad Lions to win this because they have the better team cohesion, and their early game is also significantly better than that of G2. So I don't think G2 can overcome the lead that Mad Lions is going to build off that. Mid lane, mid jungle is going to be the thing to look at. It's been the thing to look at for Mad Lions for a while now. And obviously, Caps and Youngles are going to be pivotal for G2 in any game that they play. So eyes on that. I do expect Mad Lions to win, though. Then we go to day 2. And we have BDS versus Rogue. I expect Rogue to win this. They should just win by default by their laners being so significantly better. SK versus XL. Probably an XL win, but SK definitely has a chance here. Look at the mid lane. You have Certus, who can carry on Pop of Champions. If he gets his hand on one of those, definitely possible. If XL indeed do lose the game the day before, probably terrible for them as well, in terms of the team environment, in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of player morale, which definitely affects players. Now, XL has a much better bot lane in theory. That is one way they could absolutely snowball this game out of control, in my opinion. But if I look at SK, Gillies is somebody who can prey on mistakes pretty well, I would say, compared to XL. In the top lane, I think Genox is a better top laner at this point than Finn, in terms of how he's been performing. So XL definitely not without chances to win this one, and I expect them to win this one. But SK can throw its pen in the work seriously. If they play around the top side very effectively, I do see a way that SK wins this game. But I would be inclined to give it to XL overall. Just maybe a 60-40, which is not terrible for SK at all. Mad Lions versus Astralis. Expect Mad Lions to win this one. because you have Elyoya is the best jungler in the league at the moment, so Xerxes will not be able to find much based on his personal lead. And I also think that Elyoya has much more better synergy with his teammates compared to Xerxes, which sucks for Xerxes, but it is what it is. And I think Mad Lions can win this one. Now, the one thing I will say for Mad Lions, depending on... I don't think that at any point they're guaranteed a first seed before the final day rounds up. But if they are, by some means, maybe they're going to start trolling a little bit, having a bit more fun. So that is a possibility. But other than that, I expect Mad Lions to go full throttle and win against Astralis pretty easily, I would say. I don't see where Astralis would get a lead over Mad Lions. But aside from, obviously, if Mad Lions goes for another tier 2 turret dive, which then fails, and then Astralis goes back into the game, which was what happened when they met first time. But I expect Mad Lions to be a bit more conscious of that, especially against a team like Astralis. So mid-game, maybe if Mad Lions fucks up, but I generally don't see it happening, really. Vitality versus Fnatic, the two super teams, woo! At this point, maybe Vitality is already locked in for playoffs, and Fnatic will not be locked in for playoffs at this point. That is a guarantee, at least. So Fnatic will have to give it all. I definitely think Perks has his eyes set on taking down Fnatic. I expect Vitality to win this. They will have the better team synergy heading into this game. They will have the better mental heading into this game. They will be much freer to play their game than Fnatic is. And even if Fnatic feels free to play their game, what is Fnatic's game? They don't have a game. They have solo queue players stuck together who rely on individual performances to do well. So Vitality should win this game fairly easily, if I'm very honest, because unless Fnatic completely outdrafts them, but I don't think that that will happen, because Fnatic's drafts have not been very strong to begin with. Misfits versus G2 is the match of the week, which is exciting because we haven't seen many Misfits matches of the week in the history of the LEC. And maybe this is also a bit of a nod, as in, okay, like this is your final season in the LEC. Will give you a match of the week, but it's also a bit relevant because both of these teams have spring split points. They're playing for seeding in the playoffs, and they're very close to each other at the top of the standings. Now, in this game, Misfits' strength is going to be Neon, because in the mid lane, Caps and Jankos, I expect them to focus a lot on shutting down Veteo. And if I stack up everything, given G2's poor early game but better mid game, Misfits not playing for the early game and playing for scaling, this is going to be probably the closest match of the weekend, because you have these two teams who kind of throw in the towel in the early game. Maybe if G2 goes out of their way to play something early, and then tries that against Misfits, it will be different in terms of how the games play out. But if they do that, I kind of expect Misfits to win, because Misfits has made it their style to reduce what they lose in the early game and then outscale and win later through team fights and just sheer champion strength. So I kind of expect, if G2 goes for a very early game strat that needs to snowball, I expect Misfits to win that one. If G2 doesn't and just plays for the mid and late game on equal footing with Misfits, I expect G2 to win that one, to be honest. So that's going to be interesting. Now, obviously, you want me to say who I think is going to win. I kind of expect G2 to go for another early game aggression strat. So in that case, I would say I think Misfits wins that one, which is not something I expected to say at the start of this split. Obviously, after Misfits had such a bad start, and G2 was still the reigning champions and came off a pretty decent MSI performance. But it is the way it is. Final day now. I'll try to keep it a bit shorter. Excel versus Astralis. It's... With Excel, as you notice, I'm kind of relying a lot on their previous days, because I think momentum for this team is very important. That said, I do think Astralis is going to win this, because overall, they... And I will keep repeating this point, but they stepping up as individuals has given them a lot this split, much more than anybody anticipated, because the overall level is so much lower. Normally, team cohesion would punish relying on individual performances, but we haven't seen much team cohesion, and also not in Excel. So what does that mean? It does mean that heading into this matchup, Finn versus Fidget Chachi, it's probably not gonna amount to a whole lot unless Finn gets like a Kled or an Aurelia, and that is something they go for. Xerxes versus Marcoon is something Xerxes would win at. Nukeduck is a safer player, which means Dajor doesn't probably gonna die a lot, but isn't gonna die a lot. But in the team fight, if he gets like an Oriana or if he gets a Vex, like those are the moments that Dajor can get a moment to shine. In the bot lane, it means that yes, you have Patrick and Mickey X who are the better bot lane compared to Kobe and Jonghoon. But are they going to be able to make anything of it? I highly doubt it, because XL has not played effectively towards the bot lane in these past few weeks. So if I look at it overall, then I think Astralis in their mid game are going to find those team fights and going to be better than XL. So that's why I think Astralis is going to win that game. BDS versus Mad Lions. Mad Lions should win that one. G2 versus SK. I think G2 should win that one, even though obviously they struggled a bit too much with SK in the previous matchup that they had. I think SK capitalized very well on the punishment G2 made then, but I think heading into this week, G2 will have a bit more poise to make it than SK, and if these players on the lineup are that poised, a Caps and a Jankos, they will perform much better than they did in the last time they met. I also don't see any lane where I would say, okay, this is where SK is definitely going to win. So overall, I would give that to G2. Vitality versus Rogue, very interesting matchup in terms of where are they now in terms of power level. I expect Vitality to win it, actually, because Rogue has lost their playbook, will rely on individual performances. Vitality has the team cohesion I mentioned earlier. So I think Vitality will win that one, unless Rogue can find a very good bot lane advantage, which is where I think they would have to get their advantage. But in the top lane, you have Alphari versus Odo. Alphari should win that one. And, or at least go even, they're both good top laners. Alphari is, in my opinion, the best top laner this split so far. But I don't think Rogue is going to be able to amount to much playing through that. So we'll have to be the bot lane for them. And I think that it's going to be very difficult for them. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. Misfits vs Fnatic to round up the LEC Summer Split regular portion, at least. I tweeted, I think 2 weeks ago, Misfits vs Fnatic for the final playoff spot. It looks like Misfits are already going to be locked in at this point. But it might be that Fnatic is still a win and in or win and out, or lose and out, at this position. In which case, I think, in any case, I expect Misfits to win that one. Fnatic doesn't have their identity. I think I'm predicting an 0-3 week for Fnatic if I put everything together, which would be very rough. But I genuinely think they are in such a terrible spot that there is no recovery for them. Maybe it's also a bit, if they win, I'll be feeling a bit happier for them, even though they are objectively in a terrible spot. But Misfits, Neon is the better bot laner in this split and upset, and this will make some of you very angry maybe, but look at the games and look at how it's been, he's been playing better. Just as a pure bot laner, he has been playing better. In the mid lane, Vito has been playing better than Humanoid. In the jungle, the mighty jungle, I would say that Razork is still the better jungler than Zanzara, but in terms of what they provide for the team, Zanzara is much more, I think, visible in Misfits than Razork is, because Razork is struggling to find synergy with his teammates. And in the top lane, I think Irrelevant and Wunder kind of even at this point, even though Wunder had a very good start, I think at this point he's struggling to find the same impact that he had at the start, while Irrelevant is just a solid rock who presses his button in team fights and enables his teammates to step up. So I think Misfits will win that one to round it up. And that's my preview for this week. Let me know in the comments below who you think is going to win, who you think is going to make playoffs. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more content.